I am Evan Curtis, the current artist in residency at the Mesa County Library's 970 West Studios here in Grand Junction. I will be demonstrating my stop-motion animation process today. Here with me is my character Chief Serenby from my 2010 film Chief Serenby. You can see this on my website, Vimeo, and YouTube. What I will be going over is the basic setup for stop-motion animation. So let's get started. I've got my character and a piece of metal here. Now, not everyone uses metal. I'm using metal today because the character has magnets in their feet, which help them stand up. In a little while, I'll go over how to do this without magnets in case you don't have magnets or you're using Legos or any other type of action figure. The premise of stop-motion animation is that you're taking a single frame, a single photograph of the action in front of the camera. So for example, if I'm going to have this character look towards you and wave his hand, I would set up my camera in front of the character, I'd get the lighting where I want it, and I would snap a photo. When I'm shooting on location with my characters or in my studio, I always use a wireless remote. That way I'm not touching the camera at all. Because when you're dealing with stop motion animation, the slightest variance in the camera or the composition is going to be noticeable when you blow it up to a large screen. Even if you're in full screen view on your TV or your iPhone or your mobile device, it's going to be noticeable that that camera moved a little bit. So I try not to touch the camera as much as possible while I'm filming. So I've got my setup, I've got my remote, I'd snap a photo or a photograph, you'd hear the camera shutter click, you know you've got that photo, you can look at the LCD screen on the back and just see that it was exposed properly. You've got your lighting test done. You snap the photo, move the character just a little bit, snap another photo, move the character a little bit. I'll start with the head, snap another photo. Now I'll turn the body, raise the arms slightly. Another photo. Another photo. Now, of course, you're standing behind the camera or on the side of it. You wouldn't be in front behind your character. So every time I pose it, I then move out of the way and snap the photo. It's a very time-consuming, slow, quiet process. And if you're animating at the traditional frame rate of, say, 24 frames per second, you can think of it in terms of 24 individual movements to get 1 second of footage. So I have to move this puppet 24 times to get 1 second. So if you're making a 5-minute film, I'm not going to do the math right now, but if you're making a 5-minute film, multiply 60 by 24, you can see you're eventually going to get up into the thousands of frames, which is why this process can sometimes be very meditative. You just get into the zone and start bringing these characters to life. Now you've got a wave. One thing to keep in mind is that the smaller the movements, the smoother the animation. The larger the movements, the faster the animation, and sometimes it might come across as jittery because it won't look as smooth. So if I were to take a photo from here and then move his arm all the way down here and take another photo, if you go between those two photographs, those two frames, it's going to look really fast because all you're going to see is the arm up here and then the arm down there and nothing in between. So the smaller the increments, the smoother the animation and the slower the animation. And again, the opposite, the larger the movements, the more fast it's going to play, and sometimes it won't look as natural. So, as I mentioned, he's got magnets in his feet which hold the character up. The disadvantage to this is that sometimes it's hard for them to balance on that one foot and it might want to lean forward, but there we go. So a lot of times you're just balancing these characters where you can, but once he starts to lean forward, as you would in a walk, his body weight is most likely just going to have him drop to it, like that. So in the films where I use characters with magnets in their feet, I sometimes will point their toes down on the metal, kind of like that, to act as another brace for the puppet. But what that means is that the characters aren't really walking in a natural way. They're almost dragging their feet or sliding their feet a lot. So what I've done in some of my other later films is I've shifted from using magnetic feet to characters that have shoes, boots, things on, where I'm using different types of rigs. So in the current film that I'm making, the working title is Thunder Rises, which is about a wolf hunt. This character does not have magnets in their feet. I'm holding them up with just an action figure rig that goes on the back. Now, obviously for this, I wouldn't frame the whole platform in the shot, because then I would either have to Photoshop that out of every frame, which is going to take a lot more time. But this is useful for if I'm doing a medium shot where you only see the character from the waist up. Then I can hold on to the character with any kind of rig, an action figure rig. I can use clamps. I can use what's called helping hands, which have the little alligator clips on them. And then that way I can move this character without worrying about it falling over. It'll balance on one leg, even though it's not magnetic. I can get more naturalistic movements out of this, but it's all going to depend on the type of rig that you're holding the character with and your framing in your camera. Can you see the rig or can you not see the rig? If you can see it, you either have to hide it differently or you're going to spend a lot of time photoshopping it out and digitally painting out the rig. And as you can see with these later puppets, they're also a lot more highly detailed, even in terms of their clothing. So this puppet is another one with magnets in their feet. This is from my film, The Story of Scrivener and His Aislinn, from 2008, very old film. At this point, I was making the clothes for these characters, so as you can see, I would just find random fabric, and it worked with the story because they existed in more of a fantasy universe, not necessarily the real world. So I would sew and put these clothes on the characters and just kind of use pieces of jewelry and different things I could find at the fabric store. The hat is just the tip of a glove that I cut off for the finger. Otherwise, it used to just be a glove, but it makes for a great little character hat. Because of the story going to a more realistic, serious narrative, I wanted more accurate, realistic clothing. So these characters have more reality in their faces, even in their hands. They've got textures. The hair has texture. And then, of course, the clothing is a lot more precise. Even the boots are slightly muddied and dirtied here. And that just, I determine what my film needs, what the story is, and whether I can make the clothes myself or if I need to rely on more precise reality. With this character, the wolf, this is a needle felt wolf character that I actually had an artist on Etsy create for me. She custom made it, and she's located in Hungary. But she was one of the best artists that I found on Etsy who did needle felt, and I wanted something realistic looking that would be different from the plastic action figures that I was using. What's great about this is that she built in a wire armature. Now this is getting closer to traditional stop motion puppets, where whether you're working with wool or clay or latex, they'll have a wire skeleton or a metal skeleton with ball joints that'll move. And this allows me to pose the character and get limited animation. I won't be able to get every single type of movement that a wolf could really make, but it's enough to bring the character to life on screen for just a few seconds, because that's really all these shots are going to last. When I'm making a 5-minute film, I normally don't have a single shot that's going to last 20 seconds long. So the type of movement can be very simple for this character to just show that there's a little bit of soul and life in this character, even if it's just for 3 or 4 seconds. So she made sure to keep that wire armature in. As I told her when I commissioned her for the piece, I was like, this is going to be for stop motion animation. I would love to be able to just animate it a little bit. So she was able to work with that and build in this wire armature so that I could get some movement out of the wolf. When you're all finished taking photographs, when you've got your 2,000 photographs on your camera, you can kind of scroll through it and see it play in a slower version of itself. But to really get them to play like a movie, you'll then eventually have to upload all of those photographs into a video editing software like Adobe Premiere or DaVinci Resolve. Some people still use Final Cut Pro. All mobile devices will come with some form of video editing software, but some of the biggest, more popular ones are Adobe Premiere and DaVinci Resolve. And that's where you'll take all of those photographs, import them into those programs, and it'll basically treat it like a movie. And then you can start your editing process. But this is the basic intro to stop motion animation to get you into bringing characters to life, frame by frame.